Good morning, everyone. Bladen Breitreiter, incident meteorologist, here with Jasmine to give you a weather update for the Hermit's Peak and Calf Canyon fires for Friday, May 20th. All right, so we had a very spicy night for winds out there across the fire. You know, even in places like Pecos and Chacon. Where'd you go? He's up here somewhere. There he is. Oh, he's so tall. Okay. Up at Chacon, we even saw winds up there getting and gusting up to the 30 to 40 mile an hour range all night. And that is due to the fact that, for one, we had no inversion overnight, and that inversion couldn't set up because we have that trough that is coming in right now across the Great Basin. That's kind of keeping things a bit elevated aloft. Now, the winner was Elk Mountain, which is over in this region here across the western portion of the fire perimeter. And Elk Mountain started gusting in the 50 mile an hour range in and around midnight. And then as we got a little bit closer to 4 a.m., it decided to hit a gust of 67 miles an hour. So that's pretty incredible for overnight wind gusts. You know, usually they go to sleep, right? Well, these guys stayed up all night. So it kind of is a precursor of what we're going to see as we go into the day today. Humidities over the board, across the board, were very poor. So remember, humidity recovery is a showing of how much moisture was recovered in the overnight hours. It's our maximum relative humidity. And, you know, we like to see things that are, you know, greater than 40, 50, 60%. You know, here at Calf Canyon and Hermit's Peak, we've gotten used to being excited when we see 40%. So overnight, the majority of what we saw was in that 20 to 30% category. So very, very poor. And that is due to that dry air mass, those westerly winds, all kind of persisting into the night. Now, something to note of, because of those very strong west winds, we're going to see smoke coming in from some of these heat islands here. So that's just something to take note of. It's not stuff that necessarily is getting real rambunctious here across the western perimeter. It is interior stuff. And so with those really brisk west winds, you might continue to see some of that as we go into the day-to-day, filter across into this area here, which would include Las Vegas. So, what is going on today? We do have a red flag warning in effect from 1000 until 2100 tonight. So that's 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. And the reasoning for that being the continued exceptionally dry conditions. And then, of course, we have strong winds. Winds are going to look similar to yesterday in the fact that they're still going to persist from the west. We may get, you know, a breath of a southerly influence that may turn them a little bit more west-southwest as we go through the day today. But for the majority, they will be a variation on a western folk song. The southerly influence would be felt more across here in the southern zone. As we get a little bit closer to the San Miguel Mora County line, that's when we'll start to see them be more predominantly west. And then occasionally we'll get a breath of northwest, which would be like that, coming across the north zones. The strongest of these winds are going to be felt down in here in the south zone. As we get a little bit further up into kind of the Mora country and across like Angostura, Holman and the like, you kind of end up getting a little bit of a reduction out there. So you might see a little bit less than what we would see down here across the south zone. So what does that look like? We're looking at getting widespread 50 mile an hour wind gusts across the southern zone. And then as we get a little bit further north into the western and eastern zones, looking to be a bit reduced, gusting at 40 to 45 miles per hour as we get into the peak heating of the afternoon. Now, obviously, these winds are going to maintain their elevation in intensity because we don't have that inversion. You might get a brief lull here and there as we're in these morning hours, but don't expect that to last, and definitely don't count on it. Those winds will continue to ramp back up probably around lunchtime and then persist as we get into the overnight hours. So what's happening to cause all of this? This is actually really cool, probably my favorite water vapor pieces of imagery that I've been able to get while I've been here. So we talked yesterday about a low pressure system, upper level low pressure system, that was scooting across Canada right there. And when we looked at it yesterday, it was actually very tight. Now, if you look at it today, we're seeing that more trough behavior here. And I'm sure it's really hard to see since the colors are very similar. But you can see here, it kind of does this action coming into the Great Basin here. And as we get into that base of that trough right there is where we start to see those really elevated winds. So this is at 500 millibars. So if you remember your atmospheric nacho theory, that's going to be that kind of beam layer that causes more disturbances to get down to the surface. We can see here that we're getting up into what looks like the 50 to 60 knot range here, which is incredibly elevated. But it also tells you, or kind of gives you a hint as to why Elk Mountain was gusting to near 70 miles an hour in the middle of the night. So this here is going to be our upper level feature here, and you can see it very plainly along the eastern periphery of this trough, and that is where we're starting to see convection pop up across some of the Midwest there. So that's where our instability is going to be elevated. And then here you can see right on the southern periphery here, we're starting to get some more mid-level moisture in, and we even got a little bit of a touch of some Baja moisture starting to come in down here. Okay, so we'll go to another map. We're going to zoom in a little bit. So you can still see what's happening kind of in those mid and upper levels here. But what I want you to look at and focus on is a backdoor front. And you can actually see it here, surging. We'll find you. Let's start over. There he is. And he's surging down into the panhandle of Texas. This is going to be our main disturbance as we go into the evening hours tonight. So what's going to happen here is this guy is going to continue to surge, and he's going to stall. And as he stalls here, he'll kind of chill and hang out across the northeastern portion of the eastern plains here, and we'll finally get kind of a secondary push, which is going to turn our winds more to the north. But it's real cool. It's probably really hard to see. You can see that Clayton up here, Clayton's winds are going to kind of start, well, maybe not. I think I didn't grab it far enough back. But Clayton's winds were a little bit further to the west, and as soon as that front hits, it snaps them to the north. You can definitely see it here at Tucumcari. Very westerly winds with that coming in, and then as soon as that front hits, it turns over to the northeast. So we'll see something a little bit similar today. This guy will continue to surge westward and southward, and as it gets towards Las Vegas, we'll see a shift over to the north, and then as it surges westward into the night, we'll see a shift over to a more northeast or easterly persuasion, kind of sitting at the easterly persuasion a little bit closer to daybreak. Now, wind hates running uphill, right? So that's why ridges have calmer winds. The same thing applies to winds trying to run up and get into the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. So the good news is this particular front is pretty shallow. It's not extraordinarily shallow, but it is going to have more of a kind of a gentle push into those foothills, and it's going to try to make its way up and over the eastern Sangre de Cristo Mountains, but it's going to lose a lot of momentum when it does that. So we're not going to expect to see those easterly winds starting to scream and get, real rambunctious into the middle of the night, causing a more of a dramatic east wind shift as we get onto the west slopes and into the Pecos Valley. What's more likely to happen is as that thing starts to come down, right, we'll see a northeasterly push here, and then it's going to hit this high terrain, and it's also going to get kind of funneled by it. So we'll see a lot of those winds try to get down through that gap that we go through on Interstate 25. And what's going to happen is, like in and around Pecos, you'll actually see more of a southerly push, maybe a little bit of a southeasterly push. And eventually, you know, it'll all kind of come around. But it's just kind of good to know that you're not going to see straight easterly as you're going into the night. It's going to be a little bit more gentle than perhaps it could be. So overnight recovery, this front, as you can tell by the image, is bringing in a good bit of moisture, all these colors that we haven't seen, you know, really since we've been here and looking at this water vapor imagery. So a lot of moisture at all levels is going to be coming in, and that means we're finally going to get to see some of that overnight relative humidity recovery getting into that 50 to 60% range, and then perhaps tomorrow we'll even see getting a little bit closer into 60 to 70%. So as we get this east wind shift, we're also going to get that influx of moisture, and that's going to reduce a lot of the fire danger as we're going into the night tonight. It's also going to be quite a bit cooler tonight. You can expect stuff to start getting a little bit closer into those near freezing temperatures, and then tomorrow night we might actually get back into freezing temperatures, especially across a lot of our higher elevations and our deep valleys. Chance of rain with this is more favored across, where'd my sword? There it is. More favored across the northern portion of the fire, so looking at Chacon, Guadalupita, and those areas, Angostura, those are the places that we will see the greatest possibility of having some light showers as we go into the overnight hours and into the morning hours tomorrow. That kind of dwindles out the further south we get. So we're not running nearly as high in probabilities as we get a little bit closer into like Rosiada or into Las Vegas for tonight and for the early morning hours of tomorrow. So real quick, just kind of summing it up, what we're going to be looking at. Red flag warning today going until 9 p.m. Don't burn stuff. As we go into Saturday, we're going to get that frontal passage, great reduction in temperatures. Our low end of that is looking more like 65, and then our high end is looking more like 73 at this point. A little bit, a skosh of a jump as far as our minimum humidities go, but our maximum humidity, that's what we would see at around 6 a.m. on Saturday, looking real nice, 60%. You'll actually be able to smell it in the air. Getting back into a more stable atmosphere thanks to that front. Stability loves to follow fronts. Winds are going to stay elevated a bit, and they're going to wander a lot as we go into Saturday. And then as we get into Sunday, things really chill out. We start to see a whole lot more green, whole lot more yellow. We're still going to be pretty dry, though, lower double digits into here. Pretty good overnight recovery. Stability looks a bit better, too, and then our winds are kind of getting more into that southern Sangre de Cristo normal springtime pattern of being in and around 15 to 20 miles an hour to sustain, and then 25 to 30 miles an hour for gusts. So a good reduction. Tuesday is going to be the day to look at, and that is the one that I'm seeing a bit more moisture actually getting in and pushing up into the northeast highlands. So stay tuned for that. All that, I hope you guys have a killer day. Stay rock and roll, and I'll see you tomorrow.